Hi planty people, it's Krista from Botanical Bird, and today I want to talk all about propagation. So first I want to talk about what it is and then how you can do it. After that, I want to tell you pros and cons of a couple of different ways of propagation, and then I want to show you the propagations that I currently have. So what is propagation? It's when you have a mother plant and then you do something to it so that you can grow baby plants. The two main types of propagation are soil propagation and water propagation. There are other methods such as root division, in which you separate a plant from the roots, and that can get you other plants from the mother plant. But the main two ways today I want to talk about are kind of rooting out new plants based on your old ones. So how to do each. For soil propagation, there's also two different ways that you can do it depending on the plant. For succulents, you're going to want to take the leaves, and for lots of other plants, you want to take a cutting of a stem with a node. And if this vocabulary sounds confusing, I would refer you to my plant vocabulary video. And if you're on YouTube right now, I'll throw it up in the cards. And if you're joining us from Instagram, I will put the link in the description box of this video, so you can check that out. So I'm going to show you an example of each that I have and explain the process. So here is a soil propagation that I have, they're about to fall, from some cactus leaves. And basically what I did is I plucked several leaves off of a succulent that I had, pardon, not a cactus, a succulent. And I got some soil and I put it in a Tupperware container and I misted the soil so that it would be moist. And then I arranged the leaves so that they all had as much space between them as possible. And I always leave, I guess it might not matter exactly which way you lay the leaf, but I try to lay it so that the curve of the leaf is up, so I'm not planting it, I just more so want to lay it on top of the soil. And then I put this whole container inside a Ziploc bag, and I spray inside that bag with the mister also, because it also increases the humidity. So I stick it in here, but I don't seal it all the way. And I didn't come up with this. This is from watching lots of other videos from people like Erica Lodes, Harley G. So this was not my idea. So you put it in the plastic bag and then you close it most of the way, but you do want some air to get in. And then what you can do is you can write the name of the plant and the date that you put it in there. So this is April 2020. I didn't write the name of the succulent. To be honest, I don't know the name of the succulent, but this helps keep track of how long has this plant been propagating. And it's exciting to see. Sometimes it only takes a couple of weeks to see roots grow. So periodically you want to check on the moisture inside the bag and in the soil. If you don't see as much condensation in the bag, you want to kind of open it up and spray in some more. Or if the soil dries out, you want to mist that again. So that's if you're going to soil propagate leaves of a plant. And like I said, for succulents, that can be a common way. And if you want to check out this leaf, I think I showed you already, but look at this, the roots are all covered with soil, so you can't see them as well. But basically, the roots will continue to grow, and as will this new baby plant. And eventually the old leaf is going to get all wrinkly. And when that happens, I will pinch it off, and then I'll just keep this part. And eventually when the roots grow enough and the plant looks like it can survive on its own, then I can pot it in its own container. Also, as far as light goes, you don't want direct light on propagating plants, but bright indirect light is ideal. You need brighter light than what the parent plant would be in, because it's trying to generate new growth. So that's an example of soil propagation just using the leaves. An example of soil propagation for a stem and a node is this Hoya, I believe it's a Hoya tricolor or Hoya exotica. So I'll bring it out of here. Oh, I don't want to ruin it. Ah, okay. Ooh. Oh, I probably just broke some of the roots. Be very careful when you do that. I have a lot of pumice in here. Okay, so I'm not gonna rip the pumice stones off of here, but basically what I did is I took a little cutting from a mother plant that I had, and I did the same thing, except in here, my substrate is a lot of pumice, which are those little rocks. I actually also recommend, if you're going to take a cutting from a stem, using a stem cutting, to dip the end that you're gonna put in the soil in rooting hormone, which is like a thin white powder. I'll actually put a picture of it right here. It's a fine white powder and it just stimulates root growth for plants. So I dipped it in rooting hormone, and then I had pumice, or you can use really airy soil. You just don't want it to absorb too much water because then it's not a healthy environment for roots to grow. So I just stick it in there, and same thing. I sprayed it with water before I put the plants in, and then I put it in its plastic bag. And the purpose of the plastic bag, it functions as a humidity chamber, but it's very low cost. So you can actually go out and buy humidity chambers or a humidity box, and you can put plant cuttings in that. But this is a really cheap, old school way to do it. And so I just make sure, same with the leaves, that the bag, that moisture stays in the bag. And if it looks like the condensation is decreasing, I'll just open it up, spray it. And then, like I said, when you close it, leaving some of the zipper open so that air can still get in. So where to take the cutting from? When you cut a stem, you want to make sure that there is a node. And if we remember, there's a node right above my finger, my index finger right now. So it's the junction of the petiole, which is what connects the leaf to the stem, and the stem. So it's like the juncture point for a leaf and the stem, basically. So that's a node, and that's where roots are gonna grow from. This root is coming from the node. So if you take a cutting and it doesn't have a node, you're not gonna get any root growth. And you wanna make sure that the cutting has at least one leaf, because that's how your plant will get sunlight. So it needs to have a node, it needs to have a chunk of stem, and it needs to have a leaf. And then other than that, it doesn't really matter how long it is. You can have several nodes on there, just one if you want. And then, like I said, you just stick it in. I guess the benefit of making multiple small cuttings is that you can fill up the container more. If you only take two really big cuttings, your pot isn't gonna look very full, and it's gonna take longer for that plant to look full and bushy. Whereas if you make more and smaller cuttings, then you can fill up the pot and it'll all grow at the same time. And so I feel like you will get a plant quicker that way, a full plant quicker. So those are the two different ways to soil propagate. I'm going to stick this back in its humidity chamber. Then to water propagate. So as far as I know, you never water propagate with just a leaf. I think actually you can for some, but for most plants, you're gonna wanna take a cutting in the same way that I just described with this Hoya, and you stick it in water. So actually this is a Scindapsus pictus argyrius. I actually just cut it like yesterday or the day before to root in water. So here's a good example. I'll get closer to you. So these were part of a longer plant. It was all one stem. This stem was getting a lot longer than the rest. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna cut this, and then after it's done rooting, I'm going to place it back in the plant to make the plant look fuller, and then kind of to even out all of the growth. So when I cut this, I made sure to cut at a node, which, like I said, is the juncture of a leaf and the stem, but then you want to remove several of the bottom leaves because you don't want to stick leaves in water because then they're going to rot. So you cut above or below, you cut so that you have a node at the bottom where you're going to stick the cutting in water. And you can see there's a little baby aerial root right there, which also increases the likelihood of your plant rooting out. So I have my two cuttings. I cut them so that they have a node at the bottom, and then I take off the most bottom leaves so that I have a couple of inches of bare stem at the bottom from which roots can grow. Also, when considering where you're gonna cut, you can cut closer to one node, farther away from one node, whatever. Then you want to make the distance between your cut and the node smaller. So like, let's say I cut it over here just so it had a clean cut on the plant. I can go ahead and cut it closer to this node so that there's not a whole ton of extra stem that's just bare, because like I said, roots are going to grow from this node. And then a pro of cutting plants in the first place is that it's going to promote growth on the plant that I cut. So it's not going to grow new leaves out of where I cut, but usually out of an adjacent area or somewhere nearby, you'll start to see it push out new growth. So after you cut it and take off the bottom few leaves, you stick it in water, and then within a couple of weeks, you'll start to see roots grow out of here. So let me show you an example of something that's been rooting longer. So these were actually all one cutting. Someone gave them to me, and then I made more cuttings out of the single cutting. Dun, dun, dun. Let me see if I can pull this out. So you can see here, the node that they cut that they wanted to go in the water is this one, and you can see this root right here is coming out of that node. Healthy roots are white, yellow, or orange, and I've only ever seen white roots when I root them in water. So eventually you'll get more nice roots like this. Okay, so now to talk about pros and cons of both types of propagations. So talking about soil propagation first. Some pros are that it's less work in the long run because you root them in soil and then they'll stay in soil even after they've become their very own plant. So maybe I will keep this Hoya exotica in this exact pot even after it roots. So it could be less work. Also, if you use the humidity chamber, aka Ziploc bag, it can promote growth, and so the roots grow really quickly. Also a note to just say in general, when you propagate things, generally you're not going to see a whole ton of new leaf growth while you're propagating them, because the plant is focusing all its energy on shooting out those roots. Because basically you chopped off the plant, which without the necessary environment will kill it. And so the plant is focusing on, let me stay alive. So the best thing I can do to do that is to shoot out roots so I can suck up nutrients, right? Some cons of using soil propagation is that you can't see the roots grow. So until I tugged on the roots of this Hoya exotica or Hoya tricolor, I didn't really know what they looked like. So I couldn't tell if it was rooting really well. Granted, since I have it in the humidity bag, I do see there's roots coming out of everywhere, so I kind of do see the roots, but generally you can't observe the roots as much as if you had it in water. Another con of soil propagation is that you might have to check the bags and check the soil more often. Since it's not just water, the soil will dry out eventually and you might have to mist it again, especially depending if you're not using a humidity bag, then it will dry out a lot quicker. Now talking about water propagation, some pros are that you can watch the roots grow. Like right now, no roots yet, but later, it will have roots, and it's fun to watch that progress. You like want to root on your plant. Also, I think aesthetically, water propagations are a lot prettier. Like this is like a nice accent in my house, and this is an eyesore. And so I kind of have all of my soil propagations tucked away in a corner, but it's a really bright corner because don't forget you need that bright indirect light. But it's like being covered by my couch so you can't see it. Next, cons for water propagation is that oftentimes water propagation creates very delicate roots, and so when you transfer them to soil, you might break them, or it just isn't as hardy of a root structure as if you propagate in soil. Next, you'll also have to eventually transition your plant to soil, and that can be a tricky time because it's going from an environment in which it can always be hydrated whenever it needs it to having to acclimate to a situation that's drier. So when you do that, if you change something from water to soil, like when eventually these cuttings root out and I plant them back in its mother plant, I'm going to have to water that plant a little bit more often and then wean it off because I want this to acclimate and not dry out all of a sudden. Okay, so those are pros and cons of those two methods. Next, I want to show you all of the propagations I have going. All right, so I already showed you the succulents that I've been propagating since April of 2020, and some have growth that is farther along than others. I think I was adding more leaves as time went on. So you've seen those. Next is this watermelon peperomia. This is another different way to propagate with leaves. With this one, you are going to take a leaf, like this was total one leaf, and you cut it in half, like a hamburger, not a hot dog. And I dipped these two ends in rooting hormone, and then I stuck it in the soil. And you can see, look at the little babies that are coming up. Cute. So I've effectively kind of ruined this leaf. Like this is not going to be a pretty leaf, but it's going to help us grow other plants. So that's nice. And I started that on April 22nd of 2020. This peperomia frost I started sometime also in April, and you can see the little babies. So I propagated this the same way that I did the watermelon peperomia, and you can see, you can see the little babies with their veining starting to grow. Gosh, that's just beautiful veining. Love it. And some parts of the leaf might not propagate, which is a good reason to always propagate several leaves in a single propagation. This is a peperomia polybatra. You can tell I have a thing for peperomia. Same thing, cut the leaf in half. Both ends that were going into the soil, I put in rooting hormone and then stuck it in the moist soil. And you can see here all these crazy roots and these little babies that are growing. It's mind-boggling that those little leaves are going to get to be this big if I play my cards right. Here, I already showed you, is the Hoya. It's either a tricolor or an exotica. I never know which, but you can see a little bit better the roots on this guy. So it's kind of sprouting roots everywhere because I'm putting the whole thing in a humid environment. So it's very happy and roots will sprout out everywhere, which is ideal. The more roots there are, the better chance of success you have for the plant living. I have not been telling you the dates of when I did all of these. So this Hoya obovata I started on May 18th of 2020. And you can see the new roots that are growing. Very nice. And so this is a stem cutting, just like with the Hoya exotica I just did. So Hoya plants are vining plants, so you can cut stem, making sure that it has a node. Very nice. This is another peperomia frost that I propagated on the 6th of June. So it's not going to have any roots yet, but I can show you for the part of the leaf, the one that has the beginning of the petiole, you can either kind of stick it in so this edge is in the soil, or from what I've experienced and what I've read, it's kind of better to just lay it flat because roots are really going to start sprouting out of the area where the petiole was. So for that one, you lay it down. And then for like the tip of the leaf, you want to stick the end you cut directly into the water. And just check this out. This is why I love peperomia frost. Look at that color. And this, of course, was an accidental leaf bump that I ripped off my plant on accident when I was watering it. And I was so upset, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to propagate it so I don't lose the leaf altogether. This is also a very recent propagation. I started it on the 14th of June, so it's also not going to have any roots. This is sort of an experiment I'm doing because, as you can see, most of the other peperomia I'm propagating, I've cut and I'm propagating it that way. This one, the leaves were just so beautiful, I didn't want to get rid of them. So I stuck the stems in the soil and dipped those in rooting hormone. So I'm hoping that the roots will just grow out of the stem. I don't know if that's possible, but these leaves were just so pretty and big. Once again, I was clumsy and broke off leaves on a brand new plant, so I didn't want to throw them away. So there you go. Those are all of my soil propagations. Let's see if we can get another pan shot. There they go. Okay, so now to show you my water propagations. I believe I already showed you my neon pothos propagations. I don't have these labeled with the date, and it is crushing it with those roots, partially because I have it in a long vessel, so it allows the roots to grow longer instead of like curling up together. Here is a Epipremnum Cebu Blue. I've always called it a Cebu Blue Pothos, but I think Epipremnum might be the correct term. But I love this little propagation station. It was a gift. And if you can see the roots in there, it's so much fun just to watch them grow. So I empty out the water once a week with all of my water propagations just to keep it fresh. You don't want it to get too murky or anything. This is a Monstera adansonii. You can see some of the roots are longer than the others because it was all one cutting when it was given to me. This long root is from the singular cutting. And then I made smaller cuts from that, like this root right here is smaller because it's been rooting by itself alone in the water for a lot less time. Here is a Maranta leuconura, I think it's pronounced, and we can zoom in here on its roots. I love how the roots look hairy on this one. I think that's so fun. Look at that. It's crazy. It's doing really well in the water. And then here I already showed you the Scindapsus pictus argyrius, which does not have any roots yet, but you can see that there are several nodes where those aerial roots are coming out. There are several nodes that are submerged in the water, so roots should be coming from there soon. All right, y'all. That is all of the propagations that I currently have. I'm definitely more into propagating now than I was before. I kind of was just impatient, as I am a terribly impatient person. But I think now, since I've decided I am a long-term plant parent, I might as well enjoy the process of new plant growth. And if I'm gonna have them for long enough, these babies will get big and they'll be their own plants. And they're free. How couldn't you love that? So yeah, this video was all about propagation. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them below. And don't forget, if you've liked this video, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Botanical Bird, and bird has a U in it, not an I. And to follow my planty Instagram, which is at botanical_bird. Remember, I'm rooting for you. Bye.